Hey Vikings, Miss Faiai here to read Act 3 of Romeo and Juliet with you. Last week we finished Act 2, Scene 6, where Romeo and Juliet snuck off to get married by Romeo's friend Friar Lawrence, and the nurse was there to escort Juliet to confession, but really to her wedding. So those are the 4 people right now that know that Romeo and Juliet are married. So now we're going to go into Act 3, Scene 1, which is on page 7. And right here, the stage notes again, it tells us we're in a street. Remember, it's the summer. It's really hot. That's going to come up in this scene. Mercutio, Romeo's best friend, and Benvolio, Romeo's cousin, they enter. And Benvolio tells Mercutio, I pray thee, good Mercutio, let's retire. The day is hot, the Capulets abroad, and if we meet, we shall not escape a brawl. For now, these hot days is the mad blood stirring. So remember these underlined words right here. You can find the modern version of them right over here on the right-hand column. So basically, Benvolio is telling him, let's retire, let's go home. The Capulets are out right now. If we see them, we're not going to escape getting into a brawl, which is another way of saying a fight. It's hot, and hot days make people hot-tempered. Okay, and then who should enter but Tybalt, and that's Juliet Capulet's cousin. Remember, he's kind of the hothead, so he enters from the other side of the stage. And Benvolio turns to Mercutio, and he says, by my head, here come the Capulets. And Mercutio, always wanted to be the funny guy, and he's kind of a smart aleck, he goes, by my heel, I care not. And Tybalt says to Benvolio and Mercutio, gentlemen, good day. A word with one of you. Like, can I talk to one of you? And Mercutio tells him, and but one word with one of us? Couple it with something. Make it a word and a blow. Like, if you're going to ask to talk to us, like, then let's talk, but let's also get in a fight. And Tybalt tells him, you should find me apt enough to that, sir, and you will give me occasion. Like, I'm happy to fight with you if you give me a reason to. And then Romeo enters the stage, and he's really excited to see his friend. He's like, Mercutio. And Tybalt tells him, well, peace be with you, sir. Here comes my man. And he turns to Romeo, and he says, Romeo, thou art a villain, like you're a bad guy. And Romeo tells Tybalt, villain I am none. Therefore, farewell. Like, I'm not a bad guy. Just leave. Goodbye. And Tybalt gets kind of offended, and he says, boy, turn and draw. Like, turn and draw your weapon, draw your sword. And Romeo, interestingly enough, tells him the following lines, which kind of foreshadows or gives a hint to Tybalt what he should kind of know. He kind of gives them a hint that him and Juliet are married, because he says to Tybalt, Romeo says to Tybalt, I do protest, I never injured thee. And so, good Capulet, which name I tender, which name I care for, as dearly as my own, be satisfied. Like, I care enough about you, like I care for myself, be satisfied with that and just leave. And Mercutio, Romeo's best friend, is like, what is happening? And he says, oh, calm, dishonorable, vile submission. So he's really upset, and he's like, what the heck are you talking about, Romeo? Like, where's this coming from? And he draws his sword, and he turns, and he's kind of frustrated with Romeo, but he's going to take it out on Tybalt, right? So he turns to Tybalt, and he goes, Tybalt, you rat catcher, will you walk? Like, Tybalt, you filthy cat, come here. Like, are you going to fight me? And Tybalt responds, obviously, with, what wouldst thou have with me? Like, what do you want with me? And Mercutio tells him, good king of cats, nothing but one of your 9 lives, right? Because cats have supposedly 9 lives, right? And Tybalt says, I am for you, and he draws his sword, okay? And then they fight. So they're fighting. Oh, there's all this fighting going on, right? That's my sword sound. And so they fight, and then Romeo, he tries to get in between them. He goes, Tybalt, Mercutio, hold, Tybalt, good Mercutio. And as Romeo steps in between them, and remember, these are the stage notes, Romeo steps between them, and Tybalt stabs Mercutio beneath Romeo's arm. So he gets in the way, and Tybalt goes in to stab him, and misses, and gets Mercutio under Romeo's arm. And Mercutio screams out, a plague on both your houses, like death to both of your families. And Tybalt runs off, like he exits the stage. So really, he's running away. And then Benvolio, who was there the whole time, says to Mercutio, what, are you hurt? Are thou hurt? And Mercutio, again, trying to be the funny guy, is like, hi, a scratch. Like, he's like, no, it's just a scratch. And aside means that we can hear him, but he's not really talking to his friends. He's kind of talking to himself, but loud enough for the audience to hear. And he says, they have made worms meat of me. And what are worms meat? Maggots, right? So then Romeo says, courage, man, the hurt cannot be much. Like, no, you're not hurt. And Mercutio says, like a joke, like he foreshadows again something, and he says, ask for me tomorrow and you shall find me a grave man. So a man where? In his grave. And then he kind of gets mad again. He says, a plague on both your houses. And he looks at Romeo and he says, why, the devil came you between us? I was hurt under your arm. Like he said, why did you get in between us? Like, I was hurt because of you. Like, you got in the way. And Romeo said, well, I thought all for the best. Like, I thought I was trying to help. And Mercutio screams one last time, a plague on both your houses. So he curses them and then he dies. And there's our first death in this play. Happened so quick, and it wasn't even a Montague or Capulet. It was the prince's cousin, Romeo's best friend, Mercutio. Aha. So then Romeo, he's now upset. And he says, my very friend hath got his mortal wound in my behalf by Tybalt, that an hour hath been my cousin. Like, he's only been my cousin for an hour, and he gave my friend his mortal or fatal wound that killed him. And then he calls furiously, that's the stage notes, Tybalt, Tybalt, and he's calling for Tybalt, and Tybalt re-enters the stage. And now Romeo and Tybalt are face to face, and Romeo says, now Tybalt, take the villain back again that late thou gavest me, for Mercutio's soul is but a little way above our heads, staying for thine to keep him company. Either thou or I or both must go with him. Like, Tybalt's waiting for your soul, and either you or me or both of us are going to go with him. And Tybalt tells him, thou wretched boy that didst consort him here, shalt with him hence. Like, you're here with him, you're gonna leave with him. And they fight, and then boom, Romeo kills Tybalt. So now we have our second death, all in the same scene. Okay, so now Tybalt's dead, and Benvolio, right, Romeo's cousin, tells him, Romeo, away, be gone, stand not amazed, don't look so shocked. The prince will doom thee death. Like, remember, the prince had threatened that if they fight again, they're going to get sentenced to death. So Romeo, to himself, he says, oh, I am fortune's fool. And that's where we talk about fate, which I mentioned in the KWL slideshow. If you did get to view that, is fate is actually the unspoken character in the play. Some say that fate is actually responsible for all these deaths. And Romeo actually references that in this line, oh, I am fortune's fool. And now Romeo exits. So now we're on Act 3, Scene 5. Nice little ringtone to end that last scene. So now let's move on to Act 3, Scene 5. All right. And in this scene, we have the characters Romeo, Juliet, the nurse, Lord Capulet, and Lady Capulet. Right. And this setting is in Juliet's room. It's dawn, so it's the next morning, and Romeo's preparing to leave. So it looks like after this whole fight went down and Mercutio died and Tybalt died, Romeo went to be with his wife that night. And so Juliet says, will thou be gone? It is not yet near day. It was the nightingale and not the lark. So she's hearing birds chirping, and she's telling him it's the nightingale, which is a nighttime bird, and not the lark, which is a morning bird. And Romeo tells her, it was the lark, the herald of the morn. I must be gone and live, or stay and die. So no, it was the morning bird. I have to go, because if I go, I can live. But if I stay, I'm going to die. So I think that's like twofold there. And it kind of foreshadows what's going to happen, because he's telling her, if I stay and get caught by your parents, I'm dead. And if I stay in Verona because I killed Tybalt, I'm dead. So I have to go. And Juliet tells him, yon light is not daylight, therefore stay yet. Thou needest not to be gone. So she just wants him to stay with her. And then Romeo, he tries to play around with her. He says, oh, let me be taken. Let me be put to death. I am content, so thou wilt have it so. Come, death, and welcome. Juliet wills it so. It is not day. Like, he's being sarcastic and playing around with her. And now Juliet realizes it is late. It is the morning. She goes, oh my gosh, it is. Hie hence, be gone away. It is the lark that sings so out of tune. Oh, now be gone. More light and light it grows. Like, hurry up and leave. And Romeo tells her, more light and light, more dark and dark are woes. So the lighter the light that grows, the more sunshine there is, the darker it is for us, because they have to leave each other. And then the nurse enters and she sees him and she goes, Madame. And Juliet's like, nurse? Like, what do you want? And the nurse tells her, your lady mother is coming to your chamber, her room. And she leaves the room. And Juliet's panicking now. And she's like, then window, let day in and let life out. Kind of foreshadows, let day in and let life out. And who is that life? Romeo. And so Romeo tells her, farewell, farewell, one kiss and I'll descend. And he climbs down, adieu, adieu, which is another way of saying farewell, and he exits. Well, he exits just in time because Lady Capulet enters the room and she goes, oh, daughter, are you up? Why, how now, Juliet? Like, how are you? And Juliet tells her, Madame, I am not well. Like, she lies and tells her she's not feeling well. And Lady Capulet tells her, evermore, weeping for your cousin's death. Like, are you sad because your cousin Tybalt died? But now I'll tell thee joyful tidings, girl, I have good news. Marry, my child, early next Thursday morn. The gallant young and noble gentleman, Sir Paris, at St. Peter's Church, shall happily make thee there a joyful bride. Like next Thursday, I know you're sad about your cousin, but guess what, girl? I got some good news for you. Next week, Paris is going to marry you next Thursday at St. Peter's Church. And Juliet tells her mom, now by St. Peter's Church and Peter too, he shall not make me there a joyful bride. I pray you tell my lord and father, madame, I will not marry yet. And when I do, I swear it shall be Romeo, whom you know I hate, rather than Paris. These are news indeed. And so she kind of tells her mom, like, I'm married to Romeo, but she says it in a way that's kind of tricky. She says, I'd rather marry our enemy Romeo than marry Paris. And Lady Capulet's kind of mad at her, and she goes, here comes your father. Tell him so yourself and see how he will take it. And so Capulet, Lord Capulet and the nurse enter, and Capulet asks, how now, still in tears? Evermore showering. Have you delivered to her our decree? Like, why are we still crying? Haven't you told her the good news? Lady Capulet says, aye, sir, but she will none. She gives you thanks. I would the fool were married to her grave. So basically, yeah, I told her, but she's not thankful. I'd rather her be married to her grave. Oh, be careful what you wish for, right? And Lord Capulet gets upset and he's like, how? Will she none? Does she not give us thanks? Mistress Minion, oh, say spoiled hussy, you fettle your fine joints against Thursday next to go with Paris to St. Peter's Church, or I will drag thee thither. He says, if you don't go there on your own free will, I'm going to drag you there. And Lady Capulet says to Juliet, fie, like shame on you. And Juliet tells her dad, good father, I beseech you, hear me with patience, but to speak a word, like, let me just tell you what it is that I want to tell you. And then Lord Capulet tells her, disobedient wretch, I tell thee what, get thee to the church on Thursday, or never after look me in the face. If you be mine, I'll give you to my friend. If you be not, hang, beg, starve, die in the streets. And basically tells her, either you marry my friend or you're not my daughter anymore, and I don't care if you beg and have to starve and die in the streets. And then they leave. Then Juliet turns to the nurse and she says, and she's crying and she's really, really sad. She says, what sayest thou? Hast thou not a word of joy? Like, tell me something happy. And the nurse, her utmost confidant in everything that she does, the person she confides in, tells her, Faith, here it is. Romeo is banished. I think it best you marry with Paris. And so Juliet feels betrayed, and so she lies to the nurse and she says, well, thou hast comforted me marvelous much. Go in and tell my lady I am gone, having displeased my father, to Lawrence's cell, that's Friar Lawrence, to make confession and to be absolved. I'm going to go confess my sins to Friar Lawrence. Remember, Friar Lawrence and the nurse know that her and Romeo are married already, so this should be interesting. And the nurse tells her, marry I will, and this is wisely done, and she leaves. And then Juliet's in her room alone, and she says, out to the friar to know his remedy. If all else fail, myself have power to die. Like, if I'm going to go to him and try to find a resolution, some type of solution to solve this problem, and if everything fails, I'm going to kill myself. So this is a very traumatic act. Act 3 had a lot going on, a lot of people dying. We have a lot of people threatening to kill themselves. Okay, so now we're really seeing that Romeo and Juliet is not necessarily a love story, guys. This is really turning into more of a tragedy. So tune in for Act 4, because Act 4, it gets even juicier. It gets so much better. All right, guys, that's it for Act 3. Make sure to answer your response questions for Act 3.